I'm going to start with a reading from the poet, academic, and thought leader Bayo Komolafe. I think I've shared him with you before. And he writes, "Once I lived on the tarred, lonely highways of truth, the promised dwelling places of those who did not waver. The whole world was about being either right or wrong. I was either lost or found. That was many years ago, though, and today I recognize how utterly beyond right and wrong people are, how their lives are symphonies beyond orchestration. Something happened along the way. I lost my coordinates, my map, my directives, and now the whole journey is the destination. And each point, each barren point, is just as noble as that final dot. The world is no longer desolate and empty and exclusive. She is now a wispy spirit whose fingers flirt with the wind. A million roads where only one once lay. And I need not be certain about the road traveled, since I arrived at the self-same moment that I left." You might have guessed we might be talking about seeing the world a little differently. And I have a memory from when I was probably about 4 years old. I was a little girl who loved horses, as little girls sometimes do. And this one time, my mom and her best friend took me to go horseback riding. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about horses because I was so happy, I loved them so much. So when my mom swung me up on this giant horse and told me just to hold onto the horn so she could lead me, I threw a little 4-year-old hissy fit. "I know how to ride a horse." So she stood back and said, "Sure, go ahead." And I sat there, kicked and screamed and clucked and did all the things that was supposed to make horses go, and we just stood there. And my mom waited a couple minutes, and then she stepped in to help, and she didn't laugh at me too much. And I'd love to say that that was the last time that I didn't know what I didn't know, but it's surely not. Being confident in ignorance is a very human experience. Neuroscientists tell us that our brains convince us that we are competent even when there's ample evidence to the contrary. I mean, there's a survey that said that like 90% of the drivers believe they're better than average. We all know that's not true. But to save energy, our brains take a lot of things that we've encountered in the past, and they search for something that seems familiar, and then they tell us, offer that experience so that we know what's going on. And it's great when we don't have to relearn what a stoplight is every time we drive up to one. It's really helpful for much of life. But it's not so helpful when dealing with the complexities of human beingness. Because sometimes we have been so socialized into seeing a certain world that we can't see things that exist right before our very eyes. My coming out as a lesbian is one of those things. I didn't figure it out till I was 45 years old, because I grew up Roman Catholic. It was not an option. I mean, lesbians were those scary women with unibrows, right? And I actually believed that they used beautiful women in advertising because everybody was attracted to beautiful women. It wasn't until I found Unitarian Universalism and saw all these other options that were possible that I was able to allow that particular me to come out and see things that I had never seen before. And it changed my life. It allowed a fullness and a happiness that I never could have imagined up till that point. Because I had been me all along, but I hadn't been able to live into the fullness of me until I could see something else was possible. What other kind of invisible structures might be keeping us stuck? I mean, here's a hard one. Take our modern perspective on the world. Hominids, people that looked like us, have been here on this earth for over 300,000 years, give or take. And for 299, 500,000 years of those, humans lived within an animate, alive, and connected reality. I mean, everything was alive. That tree was your brother. That tree lived in the same world the way you did. Animals were compatriots. We were all trying to survive together, and our ancestors lived interdependently within their world. Everything they saw was just as worthy of being, just as worthy of respect as they were, because they knew everything was connected. And we still can find that worldview within our indigenous siblings around the world. But about 500 years ago, we got really smart. With the rise of modernity, we started being told that all of that was naive foolishness, that people who saw the world that way were backwards and not as advanced, not as smart as we were. And plants and animals couldn't be persons. Humans were the only creatures to be self-conscious, to know that we exist and be able to plan from that knowing, right? Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" came to dominate Western consciousness, and humans moved from being embedded in reality into believing they were on top of everything else. The world stopped being alive and full of friends and guides and wonder and became a resource, something to be used for our own comfort and then discarded. Can you feel what the difference is to living in an embedded, alive reality and living into one where everything is dead and just left for us? It's a hard leap to make, because we have lived within this world knowing the world is not alive, knowing that all those alive things belong in fairy stories and children things, and all that is just silliness, right? Unless you've been keeping up with your reading. We know that plants have ingrained intelligence, that plants can listen. We know that trees cooperate. We know that whales and dolphins create and communicate plans with each other and then act them out. And there are a whole group of raptors who are known as firehawks, who will pick up a burning stick, carry it to a dry area, drop it, just to flush out all the animals so that they can hunt. We're not even the only animals that use tools, fire as a tool. We are finding out now so much that we didn't know about the world around us, so much that we have based our whole lives upon. And it feels like we're a train going too fast that we can't pull it back. So anybody that keeps saying, "Hey, look at this, the world is alive," is just like, we can't listen to you right now. We have to burn this next truckload of coal. The world flourished for 299,500 years. And once humans with our great intelligence and self-awareness took charge, it only took us a few hundred years to push it to the brink of extinction for all of us. We saw the world is dead, so we ended up killing it. Being the most intelligent beings, the apex of creation? Maybe not. But let's take a little break from that thought, because it's kind of depressing, isn't it? When I was training to be a minister, I spent a year doing what's called clinical pastoral education. And it's a year spent in some situation where you work with people and a group of other interns, and you pay attention to all the interactions you have around with the people around you. And I served my internship in Elmhurst Hospital. And I learned so much that I didn't know about medicine. Because I thought doctors, they'd studied for years and years, they had all the answers, right? You went to a doctor, they told you what was wrong with you, they fixed you, that was all there was to it. But over my time in my internship, we would be called in the middle of the night, usually to Code Blue, where something critical was going on. And the whole team was called into the room, even the chaplains were called to be there. And my chaplain's job was usually to stand at the head of the bed, right next to the patient, and just be paying attention and advocating for the patient if that was what was needed. And my fellow interns and I noticed that over the course of the year, there was two doctors that usually showed up. And one of them, we called him Dr. Handsome for obvious reasons. And he would come in, look around, start barking orders at people and say, "Do this, do this, do this," supremely confident that he had the answers, and never once looked at me as my role as chaplain, or really anybody else on the team. But there was another doctor, and we called him Dr. Kevin Spacey because of a passing resemblance. He always took his time, in spite of the urgency of the situation. He asked a lot of questions of the nurses, of the aides, and even of me if he thought I had something to offer. What had I noticed? And then you could tell he made his best guess out of all of this information, and his patients did quite well. I decided right then and there I needed a Dr. Kevin Spacey, not a Dr. Handsome, because I wanted someone who was willing to look for and find information that he didn't already have. Somebody that knew there was more out there that might change what decisions he made. And that brings us back to today. How each and every one of us have something to offer, even if we feel that there's an expert in the room, even if we feel like somebody else knows all the answers and we don't. Modernity has told us to believe that the world we filled with is not filled with possibilities. It's filled with static answers, and all we have to do is find them. But our hearts know differently, don't they? Each thought we have, each action, each way we enter a room can change the whole flow of that room. It can change the experience of every person that we're around. And instead of believing that we have to behave a certain way or act in a predetermined reality, what would happen if we stopped for just a moment and tried to see what we didn't always expect to see? What if we began seeing the aliveness in the world all around us as full of its own intelligence, its own agency, its own beingness? What if we flat out rejected that materialist view of the world and looked for the beingness in every moment of our lives? The Persian poet Rumi wrote, "Out behind ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to even talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense." Can you imagine living in that field? I invite us to begin by simply listening, allowing your mind to wander. When you go outside, instead of plugging in the latest podcast that you just have to listen to the bird song. What is that communicating to your heart? Who is singing? Which buzzing insect is that? How beautiful that tree looks against the blueness of the sky. I think I told you before, I've been a tree whisperer for decades now. They sing to me and calm me and remind me of who I actually am in this embedded reality, how I am not separate, not apart, how I belong. If humanity is destroying the planet by believing it is dead, each and every one of us can help it live by believing it is alive. Each of us have a supporting role in creating, seeing, upholding, and supporting the aliveness of the world. The most important thing you have to do is to remember that you are enough, exactly as you are. You belong in this beautiful, living, breathing, interactive reality. You are embedded in a life that is worth living, worth fighting for, not by doing more, but by doing less. Bayo Komalafe famously says, "The times are urgent, let us slow down." Let that be our mantra on this lovely summer day. Let us pay attention to the wisdom embedded in the green earth. Let us be humble enough to know that we will never know it all, but that our hearts will always know enough. Out beyond a field, out beyond there is a field. I will meet you there. Amen and blessed be.